Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ed Jevons. I'm the Global Vice President for Enterprise Performance Management and Business Intelligence at Inoapps, an Oracle Platinum partner. Today, we're going to be taking a look at our webinar on what's new in Oracle's Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, part of their EPM Cloud Suite. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm going to kick right off and go into an introduction. Then we're going to talk around some of the new features and take a look at some demos as well. So first off, just a quick note as to who Inoapps are. So Inoapps, as I just mentioned, are an Oracle Platinum partner. We're headquartered out of London in the UK. And we have offices and regional hubs out of Houston in the United States and Kuala Lumpur in Singapore in the Far East. And that allows us to provide a follow the sun type support for our customers, both in terms of sales support and supporting individual end users around their Oracle deployments. We're an Oracle only partner, so all we focus around is the Oracle technology and application stack. And we've been around since 2006, and you can see the timeline on the screen there that shows some of the acquisitions that we've made during that time and some of the other key investment activities that we've made, both expanding into the United States and into the Far East. We're around 320 staff globally, the vast majority of which are involved in delivering through our consultancies, and we've been concentrating and we've pivoted our business toward focusing on Oracle Cloud over the last 3 to 4 years. And that's what we're going to be talking around today. We're also a specialized partner in a number of different cloud technologies, and we have all the prerequisite badges and specializations that allow us to work alongside Oracle. And that's indicative of some of the awards that we've managed to collect over the last few years and of our partner status. So today we're going to be taking a look at what's new in Oracle's Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service. Now, PBCS is part of a wider EPM suite, which is in itself part of a wider Oracle Cloud Application Suite. So we're taking a look at a very small corner of that today. But suffice to say, we also run a number of events on some of the other major areas of Oracle's cloud, including their enterprise resource planning and their human capital management as well. And so we'll be talking to those throughout this session and how they link in as well as in future webinars. You can see we have a number of different customers here. We've got a few dozen different cloud customers across various different modules that you can see across the top. And rather than go through all these in detail, we just wanted to show some of the breadth of both the geographic location and the modules that we've been used to implementing over the last 3 to 4 years in Oracle's cloud. So taking a look at Oracle's Planning and Budgeting Cloud, why do most organizations choose to adopt technology like this? Well, typically they've got some of the issues being faced on the left-hand side of this slide here, and they've got to set up something looking like that on the right. So lots of different invested groups looking to pull together plans, budgets, forecasts, and they need to be able to speak to one another, and they need to be able to deliver reporting and planning capability to various different stakeholders. And so a systemized approach to doing that allows us to alleviate some of the issues that we have on the left. Things around data integration, things around the ability to collaborate, the linear reporting of your data, the traceability and auditability of the processes involved to arrive at budgets and forecasts, and the efficiencies of working on spreadsheet-based tools such as Excel, which of course have their own benefits, but also lack in some areas as well. So those are some of the issues that Oracle's Planning and Budgeting looks to alleviate. And obviously it's been around for some time now, launched initially on Valentine's Day of 2014. So we're now well into our 4th year, and we've seen a huge growth in this product specifically. It's very much been the cornerstone of the EPM cloud suite, and there's over 3,500 customers as of this date, and even some of this information is a few months out of date. So The end user count at the moment, we've got over 140,000 individual named users that have access to this cloud solution. So very widespread. Of course, built on the innovation of over 15 years of Oracle's Hyperion suite of tools. Of course, anyone familiar with that suite of tools will be cognizant of the fact it's more than just planning and budgeting, but also financial consolidation. And we'll touch very briefly on some of the ways in which these services are becoming more integrated, and we'll take a look at that in demo format in just a second as well. So throughout the demonstration and the presentation today, I'm going to be accessing the cloud directly. So please do bear with me as I log into various instances to try and give you some examples, some real-world examples of some of the areas where planning and budgeting has improved over the last 6 to 18 months. We're going to take a look at a number of different features that have occurred in that time frame. So here's some of the areas that we're going to talk to today. Some of what's new in planning and budgeting cloud service. This is not supposed to be an exhaustive list of every new function that's come out in the last 6 to 18 months, but these are some of the main ones. And one of the tasks I'm often involved in, and this is across the globe, both with brand new implementations of planning and budgeting cloud service, and when I'm asked to come in and review those that have been around for a long time. Oops, skip back there, is some of the functionality that is available in PBCS just isn't being used by the average customer. And so there's a few bits and pieces here that I wanted to talk through today, and we'll talk around these. So activity reporting and the ability to kind of get those audit style reports out of the system is something that's been improved on release by release. In the last 2 months, this has increased. And there's a number of different measures and reports that you can get out now, which we'll take a look at in just a second, that give you as an administrator a little bit more of a grasp as to what's going on in your planning and budgeting cloud service. Now that's been brought on off the back of many user requests, people saying that they felt perhaps that there was a little bit of a disconnect between the on-premises version, where they had lots of access to that type of reporting information, and the cloud version, which is by necessity a lot more restricted and tighter in that way. The second area that we're going to talk to is some of the integration that exists with other Oracle Cloud modules. So not just within the EPM suite, but also those such as ERP and HCM, which I mentioned at the beginning there, and some of the ways by which we can share data, metadata, etc. Moving down along the little diagram here, we're going to look to take a look at some of the new reporting options. Again, this has come out in the last 2 to 3 months. Infolets effectively allow us to give little snapshots of reports, little KPI pieces of information, little indicators that we can have on our home screen. And we're going to take a look at some of those in action in just a second. From a predictive planning perspective, this was one of the nice areas of functionality that came out with PBCS as part of the SmartView add-in, which is of course now spread to other areas such as ERP Cloud. We're going to take a look at how predictive planning looks within the web front end as well, though, and through the UI from within a browser. From a connections perspective, within the EPM suite itself, we can make far more tightly integrated from a sort of process and a workflow perspective the different EPM modules. So they can all live together in a single browser UI, and you can navigate back and forth between your EPM instances, if you have multiple instances, at the click of a button without having to open up multiple browser windows. So really a nod to perhaps the days of on-premises Hyperion, where you would have a single UI where you could access all of your consolidation, account reconciliation, planning and budgeting, etc. Applications. And finally, some new functionality around valid intersections. So this being an answer to the issue that some users sometimes have, whereby the security model doesn't necessarily allow for the finite allowing or disabling of data entry into certain intersections. And Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service has, in the last 6 to 9 months, been able to get users around that with some nice functionality. So these are some of the areas we're going to take a look at today, and then we'll very briefly touch on what else we're going to be expecting coming over the next few months. And like I say, this is by no means an exhaustive list of all the new functionality, but we're looking forward to being able to bring you a presentation like this every 6 months or so, just highlighting some of the core features, both that have been released and both that we've found that lots of users are starting to use or are discovering have become very useful. So let's move in to our first of those new features. So activity reporting. Traditionally, if you were an administrator of an Oracle Hyperion instance, you would have all the access you needed to that back end to be able to see on your own servers what was the CPU usage, what's the memory usage, how many individuals do we have logging in at any one time. You had a lot richer access to the log files effectively. Now, of course, PBCS, we're given a very user-friendly front end, which is great for allowing us to build as administrators and maintain the application. But perhaps what we were lacking is the ability to interrogate and get this type of information. Well, Oracle have come leaps and bounds in the last 6 months with respect to the type of activity reporting they allow us to do from that kind of audit perspective. And we can see here that some of the different reports that are available to us now include duration of the users that are interfacing, the number of requests they have by hour, the CPU usage, the duration and the number of the S-base operations by hour, and the memory usage. Now, this isn't just useful for those that perhaps want to take a look at those stats because they are interested just by the by. This really can assist us when we're building out the application and we start to do that testing. We can see how far are we pushing the limits of an application with respect to its size, its complexity, sophistication, the efficiency of the calculations that have been written. So having this data available to both the developers and the administrators of our planning and budgeting cloud service applications is a very welcome change and something that I think we're going to be seeing a lot more usage of. And I expect this to expand as well. I imagine there's going to be other activity reporting that we're going to see over the next 6 to 9 months. From an integration perspective, Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service has, from its inception, come bundled with a data management module, which is, of course, a very light version, some might say, of Oracle's FDMEE integration product. So what we now have out of the box by virtue of this is the ability to integrate seamlessly with both Oracle's ERP cloud and their HCM cloud. Now, this is, I think, the one thing that we won't be showing a live demonstration of today, just because it would necessitate us having several different environments of quite large scale, and it doesn't really lend itself to being demonstrated, but I hope we can at least describe it in some detail. So you have the ability to bring in your data from both ERP and HCM directly. So for example, HCM Cloud now being supported, we can move our data into our workforce planning or our strategic workforce planning applications. And those could be any number of different attributes or pieces of data. It could be our workforce, could be our payroll data, could be position data, etc. So we can bring that directly in. One of the really nice things that we have the ability to do, though, is also take data back from Oracle's Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service into, for example, Oracle Cloud Financials. And that's what you're looking at here on screen. Effectively, you specify the S-base application, which is in this case the Oracle ERP Balances Cube. And then you have your planning application, which would be your PBCS name here. These have been blanked out because they've got customer information in. But then you specify your mapping. You can choose how you want to map from target to destination there, and you can push that data back into that ASO cube directly from your planning and budgeting cube. So that two-way integration really come leaps and bounds. And this has been refreshed in the last 12 to 18 months. There was a prior integration that existed between ERP Cloud and PBCS that required a little bit more setup than this. This is far cleaner now. And far more reliable. And of course, the mappings, you're going to be very familiar with those if you're using data management already to bring in or push out flat files. From a reporting perspective, again, in the last 2 to 3 months, I think in this case, we've now seen the introduction of Oracle's Infolets to Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service. Now, anyone that had been previously using some of Oracle's other cloud modules, such as ERP or HCM, may have seen these before. They're effectively little snapshots, little KPI indicators that give you the ability to see on your home screen key performance information. So it might be, as in the case you have here, you've got some bits around revenue here or some expenses by category. And the really nice thing is these are a little bit interactive as well. So these little arrows, and we'll see this when we go to the demo, allow us to drill a little bit further into those analyses, into those visualizations. And you can have 3 separate views, if you like, per each one of these tiles. So from an administration and a creation perspective, these are all built off of data forms, and the editor for building these out is exactly the same as the dashboard editor. So very easy to use, very easy to set up, and you can choose which of these you would like to have on your home screen as indicators. This gives you a nice veneer to the application as a whole, if there's certain elements that you like to report in a visual way every day. And we will be taking a look at that in the demonstration. The predictive planning that we talked about, obviously this has been around with SmartView, but we're now looking to extend this out into the web UI, so you can see what this would appear like on a browser. And of course, one of the nice things about this is it means you can now use your predictive planning on a laptop without opening Excel, or on a tablet device or your mobile phone, etc., whatever mobile device it is you use to connect to your EPM cloud. Whereas previously, obviously, you wouldn't have been able to do that unless it allowed a native Excel application to be run. So it's got all the same functionality. In my opinion, a little bit neater in terms of the way in which it can show you that key information that you'd want to know before pasting in your predicted results. So it'll give you, the growth rate here. Here it's telling us it's going to be far above the prediction. It's a little bit more obvious than it appears in the Excel version for my money, and I do quite like this functionality. And you've also got the ability to paste those results back in. So you've got parity of functionality with Excel, but in a perhaps a little bit more easy to use UI there through the web browser. And we'll take a look at this as well in the demonstration in just a second. From a cloud connections perspective, we've obviously got a number of different EPM modules are now available. PBCS was alone when it came out in 2014, quickly followed by the reporting cloud service. We now have some 8 that we can connect with one another through the EPM cloud. And here's an example that we'll take a very quick look at in a second here, of where I'm in an FCCS instance and I can actually just connect directly into a PBCS instance. So not only can I connect directly from within the navigation menu of one EPM instance to another, I can also, if I'm using the tile functionality to build out my navigation, I can navigate seamlessly from one EPM pod to another. So very useful if you want to create a more integrated application flow, if you have users using more than one Oracle Cloud application, and you'd like them to be able to just very quickly go from, for example, an account reconciliation process to a financial consolidation process to a planning and budgeting type process. They can follow that navigation through without having to open up 3 separate windows, 3 separate URLs, 3 separate logins, etc. So far tighter integration there between the EPM modules. And I'm sure we're going to see more functionality to this end coming soon. And the valid intersections. So effectively, this is designed to protect against that kind of human error in the data entry. So security can take us so far, and we could specify security on, for example, a specific entity and say that I can or I cannot enter data against that entity, and then a specific account. I either can or I cannot enter against that project investment account. But there may well be cases where I want to enter for a specific account for entity 101, but not for 110. And that's where valid intersections come in. So it allows us to control cross-dimensional specific intersections where I either can or cannot enter data. And the nice thing about this is the actual building of those rules, and again, we'll take a look on the demonstration in a second, is all driven by the UI, and you can create the rules in there just using the little drop-down menus there. So there's no code needs to be written. And the other nice thing about this is you can enable these and disable them at the click of a button. So if I all of a sudden realize that actually we would like to enter some project investment account data against that entity 110, I could turn it off and I could turn it back on, and at the click of a button, it's going to sort that out for me and allow me to enter. So valid for intersections, great for if you still have issues around erroneous data being entered into your planning and budgeting models, and we'll take a look at that in just a second as well. So at this point, there's going to be some future bits and pieces that are coming as well. But let's make the most of the time and take a look at some of these bits and pieces. So I'm going to come out to my my browser here, and we're going to take it one at a time and start looking at some of these bits and pieces. So from a predictive perspective, we spoke about predictive planning and how we can use that from within the web UI. So let's take a look. What does that look like? I'm going to go into one of my task lists here. On my Firefox browser, I'm going to search for the predictive task, and I'm going to go on the predictive planning form here. This is just a nice one that lends itself quite nicely to being looked at. So as you would see normally in SmartView, I've got some historic, and then I've got this predict version where I might want to paste in some predicted results based on my historic actuals. So on the form, I can go on to actual actions here, and I have this option here to use predictive planning, which is by default enabled on all these forms. Once I click that, it's going to go, and just like in the Excel version, it's going to go away. It's going to take a look at the specific account in question. Here we're looking at total revenue. I can of course cycle through these and take a look at the various different accounts that we have. And it's going to show me my seasonality for the prior periods, and then it's going to give me a prediction here. And we can see that the data here doesn't seem to be supporting a very good forecast here, and the risk is quite high, but it's giving me that information there, and it's giving me my prediction of 1.2 as a growth rate, and basically telling me that my forecast is therefore far above what we're predicting. So perhaps we need to amend that. And of course, it's going to give me my best case and my worst case scenario here based on the statistical probability. Now, at the point I was ready to accept that prediction, I could, of course, click on the paste data, and then I can choose, do I want to paste all of it, just a certain number of periods, all the members on the form, and I can choose which version I'm going to be moving that to. So parity with the functionality that we're used to within SmartView, but just through a nice web front end here. In my usual task list, I've still got access to that just via the actions menu. So let's take a look at some of the connections. I've got multiple browsers open down here, so let's be lucky and connect in and see where we get to here. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the activity reports that we spoke about here. So in our overview of our application, we can of course see some of the basic KPIs, our tasks, data entry, etc. But on the activity reports, we have a number of reports available now, and you can see the date and time that those are being generated at for that previous period of 24 hours. So I can go in here, I could just download those, or I can just view it on the fly here. Obviously, this being a test instance, there isn't a whole bunch of users that are logging in ever so frequently. It's usually me, and I can see that as a result, our CPU usage is extremely low there. So if I was a developer, I'd be pretty happy with this, and the memory usage, obviously, of both WebLogic, Essbase, and other areas of the application is defined there. So you can see as of today, when I've been preparing the demo, we've started to see a little bit of an uptake on the Essbase data. But like I said, not only can you view that just immediately on the fly there. I could also download these on a periodic basis and decide that I want to save these away for later evaluation. So just another little use there that we have of our activity reports. Now let me hop into another of our applications here. So again, that one's timed out in the background, just logged me off, so I'm going to click OK, and it'll bring me back in. So just to the point of the connections, so I'm now in an FCCS, a Financial Consolidation and Close instance, and what I'm able to do from within here is at the click of a button, using my navigator, I can actually use those connections and connect into a PBCS application. So as long as I was correctly provisioned across both FCCS and this PBCS instance, at the click of a button here, it should actually allow me to jump straight in, and I've only got one window open, and it's now taken me out to a planning and budgeting cloud service instance. Now the only limitation on this is that you must be on the same version of EPM for both, so you might find that if you tried to go from a production instance to a test instance, that you would perhaps have some issues there. But suffice to say, production to production is absolutely fine, and you should see the functionality as we've just managed to view it there. So let's take a look at the valid for intersections now. If I can just find the right one. Yep, this is it. So again, set up from within the application here. So we've got lots of tools available to us. Let's just find our valid for intersections. If I click on the valid intersections here, I can see an example of an intersection that I've created out here. So I've said that for this specific entity of 110, I want to be able to restrict project investment. So I don't want to enter any project investment against entity 110. And I've saved and closed that off, and I've got that marked down as enabled. So if I found an intersection now where I had that 110, and just to show that that is the entity that we're looking at in there, 110 is called Facilities Resource here. If I refresh, we can see that this entire intersection here is blocked off for me. I could, of course, disable that valid for intersection restriction there, and then when I came back in, as long as I previously had access to that, I now can once again enter and submit data against this. So really nice piece of functionality there. You just set up for the entity and the account that you want, in my case, or you can add as many different dimensions to that as you want. We could add a new dimension here and restrict it further still based upon our dimensional model, and then you can enable or disable that at the click of a button, and that instantly is reflected within the model. So once I refresh again, it's re-enabled and I can no longer amend that data. So pretty useful there from the perspective of just restricting what people can and can't see there, or can and can't enter to, should I say there. Let me quit out of this guy here, and we'll quit out of here, and we'll come into this guy, and we'll log in as a final user here to quickly see the last piece of functionality that we're going to be taking a look at, which is around the Infolets. So if I log in as demo admin for this application, you can see on my home screen now I have a slightly different experience to when I was logged in as myself, demo admin. We've set up some different access for here, and I actually have this second area, this second pane, if you will, of the home screen. And if we click on that, wait for that to load, and we'll see if our Infolets are here. And there you go. So here's some example Infolets. This is a higher education application that we're taking a look at here. And I've got my student mix. I can see how many people are entering, how many transfers. And if I wanted to drill into that detail a little bit more, at the click of a button, I can get out. I can see that there's a bar graph behind that, and I could actually expand that out if I wanted to see how does that differ year on year. And once again, with any of these, we can have multiple layers of Infolet data in there. So some nice little visualizations just as a little key performance indicator for me when I first log on. Maybe these are things that I like to look at day by day, and so they're just accessed there from that front screen. And in terms of how we amend those, it's exactly the same as the dashboards in terms of the UI to build those out. So all the infolets are built on pre-existing screens, data forms, so I can edit any of my existing infolet setups here, and I could choose other data forms to bring on to the grid here. So each of these could be edited accordingly, and I could choose what sort of charts that I want to have. Rather than having that, I might want to look at that as just a tile rather than a bar chart, etc. So those are the 5 different pieces of information that we said we would be able to show. So just to recap, what is it we've seen? We saw the predictive planning there within the web UI. We saw the connections, the ability to connect from an FCCS instance to a PBCS instance through the click of a button. No re-authentication, no reopening of browsers, no reselecting of a URL. We saw the activity reports and some of the different analytics that you're able to get out around your application performance. We saw the valid for intersections that restricted the input into certain intersections that could be enabled and disabled at the administrator's choosing. And we've seen the infolets created in just the same way as the dashboards and accessed from the front home screen of our EPM instance. We'll quickly hop back into our presentation. And in closing, what are we expecting to see in future releases? Well, anyone that's recently tried to create a planning and budgeting application will see that you now have this sales tile available there. And as we can see here, there's a comprehensive solution for managing sales performance is the next thing to be released as part of that suite. In addition, I think we can expect to see a lot more in the way of integration with the other cloud applications, specifically with respect to metadata and being able to pull that metadata from HCM or ERP cloud without the use of a flat file using data management. And I think the improved synergy in reporting across all of the cloud releases, we're seeing that as well as the fact that the financial reporting studio is no longer supported for PBCS. I think we'll see the same following suite with the ERP cloud as well, and I expect to see perhaps some greater integration with some of the out-of-the-box ePBCS modules. And we've seen recent releases in areas such as strategic modeling, and I think we're going to see an expansion upon that as well. And of course, we're going to see the removal of some legacy functionality that perhaps no longer is widely used or makes sense to have given some of the new releases as well. So like I alluded to at the beginning, this is the first in a series of what's new in the respective modules, and we do hope to be able to take you through and describe some more functionality, both that we haven't covered today and that has not yet been released in our future webinars. So please do look out for them. With that, I will say thank you once again for joining us. I'll point out that we do have a number of industry solutions for Oracle's planning and budgeting cloud service that are industry specific, that serve areas that ePBCS perhaps doesn't with such finite detail, and that we're always keen to talk to people with what they believe is a specific industry requirement for a planning and budgeting application. And we've got a number of different events and webinars coming up revolving around these as well. So we would ask you, of course, to stay tuned and do look out for some more of those as well. And with that, I will say thank you ever so much for your time. Once again, I was Ed Jevons, and we thank you for joining us today on this, another in our Inoapps series of EPM webinars. Thank you again.